We have painted up our spare tire mount, nice dark green, and gone ahead and mounted the aluminum plate to the center of it and screwed the wing nut in and have it sort of sitting on the frame there where it goes, just as a point of reference. And it's just one more part we got figured out, and one less part we have to deal with. So in this shot you can see what we've decided to do with these spring retainers. Originally this plate had 2 studs in it, and this is what happens with these 2 studs. They're used to clamp the spring pack together. Since the spring doesn't have a through bolt in the center, this will make sure that the spring is clamped together properly. This pin locates in the center of the framework under the rear end, and then you have 4 bolts that go down through here to hold this whole spring to the rear end housing. And what we've decided to do to fix this is get some 1/4 inch by 3 inch long grade 8 bolts. Don't have to really be grade 8, but that's what we had laying around. And what we're going to do is cut the heads off those bolts, and we'll chamfer the edge of the hole there a little bit, and we'll weld those into that plate. And then we just put nuts and lock washers on the bottom, and that'll clamp the spring pack together. And they do that because there's no way to keep this. Here we have some radiator hose clamps holding the whole spring pack together right now, but there's no way to make sure that your springs are all properly stacked if you don't do this, if you don't clamp them together. When you go to put it in the car, they can move all over the place. So this way you can clamp the spring pack together and bolt the axle down to it, and everything stays where it's supposed to be. While we're at it, we can have a shot of our handy dandy new British Standard Whitworth wrench set. Got to have that to work on this thing, because all the nuts and bolts are just a little different from American stuff and metric stuff, that you got to have special wrenches to work on it. So we got a parts order in today, so we'll start putting some new parts in here. One of the things we got was rear spring bushings. So what we're going to do is try to use the vise to push out the old bushing and push in a new one. So we use this socket to push the bushing into that hollow tube there. And what I'm going to do is stop about halfway through. We'll take the new bushing and start it in there. See if we can't use the new bushing to push the old one out. Now it's going to be important to make sure that that bushing is in the center of the spring eye, so we better stop and see what we're doing here. There's the old bushing, and we've got to come through there just a little bit more. Probably a lot easier if you have an extra set of hands. So we've pushed the old bushing out of the spring, stuck in there pretty good. So what we want to do now is take a little bit of paper, sandpaper, and we'll clean up this spring eye a little bit here, get the rust out of it. Get ready to push the new bushing in. You want to make sure that the bushing is nice and square with the spring. You're in the vise there, it should slide right in. Now we get to the place where we're bottomed out, then we're going to have to put a tube in the other side to let the bushing come through. So now you can see that we've gone a little bit too far, and we're going to have to push the bushing back the other way a little bit, get it centered up in the spring. You can eyeball it at first, and then take a measurement to make sure you got it in the middle. Right now we've been going a little bit too far one way and then a little bit too far the other way. So it doesn't take much. There we go. That looks pretty good. We'll measure it and see how it really looks. So in order to put the rear spring on, first thing we did is polish the front pin. This is the front pivot pin where the spring eye goes, and we'll install the front end of the spring first. Important to get the spring relatively square so that the bushing slides straight on. Now we're going to have to get another tool and get it on the rest of the way. You have a washer, thick washer that goes into a slot in the pin so it doesn't rotate, and then the nut. We're going to leave the nut loose for the present time, although Backyard Bob rule says never put a nut or a bolt in without tightening it up, because you'll never be able to remember which ones you left loose and which ones you tightened. So we'll have to put a tag on this to make sure we know it's still loose. Now we have enough slop in the system to pick up the rear and get it into the frame as it's normally supposed to go. You're going to notice that there's a flat here, and that flat has to correspond with the flat in the frame. So we're going to have to turn that just a little bit to get that to line up. Got our genuine British standard channel lock pliers. Just grab a hold of that, rotate that a little bit. And we'll have to finish by pulling it all together with the nuts.